I never thought picking up a garden spade would leave me wondering if my own family wished me dead. It was a warm September Sunday. I had just finished watering my zinnias, the last flowers still holding on after the fall, and decided to stop by Michael and Sarah's. They'd borrowed my spade for their new raised beds, and I was there to take it back. I didn't text, I didn't knock. We were family. I always just went up the back steps and onto the porch, like I had 100 times before. That's when I heard her. Sarah. Her voice drifted through the open patio door, half laughing, half dismissive, casual and cutting all at once. Why is she even still alive? Silence. Then Michael's voice, lower, muffled. I couldn't catch the words. Something in me froze. My breath? My hand? I couldn't tell. The spade slipped in my grip, almost falling, but I held on. I stepped inside, shoes still dusty, past their spotless kitchen island, past the orchids Sarah loved to show off. And then, deliberately, I set the spade down on their granite countertop. Not outside, not in the shed. Right there in the gleaming heart of their home, where it didn't belong, a silent claim that it was mine. They hadn't seen me yet. I moved to the dining table and lowered myself into a chair. Slowly, carefully. My hips gave their familiar little creak as I sat, the only sound in the house besides their breathing, in that moment when they realized I was there. Sarah turned pale. Her jaw dropped just slightly. Michael's eyes widened and then dropped to the floor. He opened his mouth like he was going to say something, but nothing came. I didn't speak. Not yet. I looked around the room instead. Noticed the new bar stools. The updated backsplash I'd chipped in for last winter. My photo, the one of me holding baby Eli, tucked between a stack of junk mail and a scented candle. That's what I was now. A decoration to tuck behind the bills. A burden. An old woman they didn't expect to keep living, and apparently didn't want to. I finally stood. My knees stiff, my back straight. You left the door open, I said simply. I heard everything, Michael started stammering. Mom, we didn't mean. But I just raised a hand. No anger yet. Not on the surface. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I walked out the front door without waiting for Sarah's fake apology or Michael's spineless excuses. I wasn't ready to talk yet. But I would be. And when I did, it wouldn't be as their mother or their convenient old house guest. It would be as a woman with nothing left to lose, and everything left to take back. 3 weeks earlier, I still thought they cared. Michael had come over after I slipped on black ice outside the post office. I'd cracked my wrist in 2 places and scared myself badly. Bone pain does that to you when you're 74 and alone. He brought me soup and some store-brand ibuprofen, sat on the edge of my recliner like he had somewhere better to be. You know, Mom, he said gently, maybe it's time we talk about downsizing. Downsizing. The word sounded sterile, like I was some corporate asset being liquidated. It's just too much house for you, he added. All those stairs. And Sarah, of course, was right behind him with her polished smile and empty reassurances. We've been thinking, what if we helped you get into one of those new retirement condos on Broadview? You know, with the shuttles and the wellness center. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I stared out the window at my backyard, my roses, my wind chimes, the robin's nest I'd been watching for weeks. The next day, without a word to me, Sarah brought over a realtor. A stranger stood in my living room taking notes while I was still in a wrist brace and hadn't even had my coffee. Just a preliminary visit? Sarah chirped. No pressure. I didn't let them see how much it rattled me. Instead, I made tea, sat down at my kitchen table, and listened to the realtor describe my home like it was already on the market. Good bones. A little dated. Could stage well with the right lighting. My chest ached. Not from the fall, but from the invasion. The presumption. The casual way they'd started dividing up my life before I'd even agreed to anything. I told them no that afternoon. Michael looked disappointed. Sarah smiled like someone indulging a stubborn toddler. Of course, Lori. No rush. We're just trying to help. Then came the second fall. This time, inside the house. Dizzy spell. Not serious. but enough to earn me a hospital stay. When I came home, the help was waiting. Michael carried my overnight bag into the car without asking. "Just for a little while," he said. "We cleared out the in-law suite. It's got your own entrance and everything," Sarah added. "It's safer this way. Safer. Condensed. Contained." They framed it as kindness, framed me as fragile. And I almost believed it, until I noticed the locks were changed on my own front door. They called it precautionary. I called it what it was, a quiet eviction wrapped in concern. They thought I was folding, that they'd finally nudged me onto the shelf where they could forget about me. They didn't know the shelf was booby-trapped. The bruises from that second fall had barely faded when the next cracks started to show. At first, I told myself I was being sensitive, old, paranoid. I'd spent my life disciplining students and managing teachers, but here I was, doubting my own instincts. The first time, it was just a look. Sarah rolled her eyes when I corrected Eli's multiplication homework. "We use a different method now," she muttered, as if basic arithmetic had expired like spoiled milk. Michael didn't say a word. Then came the whispers. Soft, hurried conversations in the hallway outside my door. Doors that were never fully shut. I'd catch my name. Phrases like, "She doesn't even notice," or "It's just temporary until," followed by silence when I walked into the room. One afternoon, I opened the medicine cabinet and froze. My prescription pills, blood pressure, thyroid, pain, gone. When I asked, Sarah looked at me like I'd accused her of murder. "We toss them. They're dangerous, Lori. We can't risk the kids getting into them." They were in a locked container on the top shelf. "Exactly," she snapped. "Still too risky." I said nothing, just nodded, even as the back of my neck tingled with something sharp and dark. I had half a mind to ask where she'd tossed them, but something told me I wouldn't like the answer. That night, I dug through my purse looking for the key to my safety deposit box. Gone. I hadn't used it in over a year, but I knew exactly where I kept it. In the zippered pocket of the floral wallet I'd carried for a decade. I emptied the entire purse onto the bed. Nothing! I didn't accuse anyone. Not yet. Instead, I walked outside, into the little patch of backyard they'd sectioned off for me, like a dog run behind a guest house. The lilies I planted there after my husband died were just starting to bloom. I sat on the bench beside them, rubbing my wrists like the pain might explain the tension in my chest. That key was more than a piece of metal. It was the last layer of independence, the gatekeeper to everything I had locked away. My husband's letters, the emergency estate documents, the second will he and I had quietly signed when Sarah started managing the family finances after his stroke. They thought I wouldn't notice. But they'd made one fatal mistake. They forgot who I was, not just a widow, not just a mother, not just the old woman in the back room. I was Dolores Whitman, retired school principal, former district director, and for 10 years I'd taught a seminar called Protecting Your Financial Legacy After 65. They thought they were playing checkers. I was already moving my queen. They thought I was just sitting quietly in the garden, puttering around with pruning shears and flower beds. What I was really doing was watching, listening, logging everything, because they'd forgotten one thing, something crucial. I wasn't just a retired school principal. I'd spent 12 years as a financial literacy advocate for the state board. And before that, I served as a board member at the Franklin County Credit Union. I wasn't just good with money. I knew how systems worked, where to look, what to document. I knew exactly where every penny of mine lived, where it came from, where it was going, and what it looked like when it started crawling into someone else's pocket. The emergency estate plan my husband and I had created after his first stroke, still legally valid, filed in triplicate. It named me sole executor. It also included strict protections against financial exploitation. My lawyer at the time had said, "You'll never need this, but it's good insurance." Turns out, he was wrong. I did need it, and I intended to use every inch of it. After I found the key to my safety deposit box missing, I didn't panic. I checked the lockbox in my closet. They hadn't touched that. Inside was a photocopy of the original estate plan. I made 2 more copies and slipped one into a manila envelope, labeled it plainly, in case of emergency. Claire Chen. They didn't know about Claire yet. That was coming. But first, I opened my old laptop. A clunky Lenovo they called ancient and cute. It still booted up just fine. I logged into my credit union account, which Michael had assumed I no longer used. He and Sarah had moved all their banking to an online-only platform years ago. Easy, fast, sleek. But I trusted what I could see. Print, touch. There it all was. My checking, savings, retirement account, and the trust fund I'd set aside for Eli's education. And more importantly, I could trace every transaction, every deposit, every withdrawal. I printed the last 6 months of statements, highlighted the oddities, made notes in red pen, my old habit. 2 charges to a Vermont family retreat caught my eye. I didn't remember booking anything, but Sarah had posted vacation photos that same week. Ski lodge, luxury cabin, fire pit under the stars. Paid in full. By me. Then I checked the power of attorney records I kept on file. Mine hadn't been updated since 2017, but my digital credit union portal showed a new POA listed. Medical and financial. Both signed 6 weeks ago. Both naming Sarah. And that's when I knew. They weren't just planning to shuffle me into a retirement condo. They were laying the groundwork to erase me completely. But I wasn't going anywhere. I was just getting started. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table with a pot of decaf and a legal pad, writing everything down while it was still sharp in my mind. Dates, statements, receipts, conversations. At 6:17 a.m., I picked up the phone and called Claire Chen. "Lori Whitman?" she said, her voice warm with that mix of surprise and reverence I'd only ever heard from former students. "You changed my life. You were the first adult who ever told me I was smart enough to make it to law school. I need your help, Claire, and I need you to believe everything I'm about to tell you." "I do," she said instantly. "What's going on?" I told her. About the forged power of attorney, the missing key, the Vermont retreat charges, my house slowly being transferred out from under me, while I recovered from a fall they called predictable. I didn't cry, and I didn't beg. I just laid it all out like I used to do in staff meetings. Calm, structured, undeniable. Claire didn't interrupt. When I finished, she took a slow breath. "First step, we protect your assets. Then we expose theirs." Those were her exact words. And something in me, something old and tired and humiliated, began to sit up a little straighter. Claire was 39 now, a probate attorney with a specialization in elder financial abuse, top of her class at Case Western, runs her own practice in Columbus, the real deal. She was also loyal, fiercely. "I'm going to document everything," she said. "Every forged document, every misuse of funds, every medical claim they've made without your consent. We'll do this the smart way, the legal way. No drama, no fireworks. Just a trail of truth they can't wiggle out from under." I felt my eyes sting for the first time in days. It wasn't relief. Not exactly. It was something quieter. Recognition. For the first time since my fall, hell, maybe longer, someone looked at me and didn't see a burden, or a problem to manage, or a senile old woman who didn't know what day it was. Claire saw me, the woman who'd once fought for Title IX protections in our district, who wrote her own retirement plan, down to the last decimal, who knew how to play chess. We made a plan that morning. Claire would begin pulling court records and verifying signatures. I would act normal, polite, compliant. The same way I used to with board members I knew were stealing from the cafeteria fund. "Let them think you're asleep," Claire said. "That's when we'll strike." They thought they'd tucked me away, but they forgot who raised the people who now stand in their way. Me, Dolores Whitman. They picked the wrong old woman to erase. By the end of that week, Claire and I had a full plan. Not just hopes or hunches. A legal roadmap. I wasn't fumbling in the dark anymore. I had light, and I had leverage. We met in person on a Tuesday morning at her office in Worthington. I wore my old navy blazer and brought a thermos of chamomile tea. Claire greeted me like I was a senator. We sat down in a small, sunlit conference room. She slid a folder across the table. "This," she said, "is where we begin." Inside were 3 bullet points, typed and double-spaced. She'd labeled it simply, Objectives. Whitman Estate Protection Plan 1. Secure all remaining assets. Freeze house deed. Block unauthorized withdrawals from retirement and trust accounts. 2. Revoke and challenge the forged powers of attorney. 3. Establish legal authority over all medical and financial decisions. Yours alone. No fluff, no pity, just facts. Claire had already drafted a motion to contest the new POA. She was moving fast. "The court won't like that your son and daughter-in-law filed updates without your presence, especially not with a notary involved who happens to be Sarah's friend." I told her about the missing safety deposit box key again. She nodded, writing something down. "Do you know what was inside?" she asked. "Yes, copies of my original will, my husband's pension transfer documents, and the amendment we filed in 2019. We added a clause after his stroke, strict conditions on any transfer of property or financial access. I made sure it required both our signatures and a physician's letter." Claire stopped writing. "Did they ever have that letter?" I shook my head. "Not unless they forged it." Her eyebrows lifted. "Then we may be looking at criminal charges, not just civil recovery." I should have felt afraid. But all I felt was cold clarity. They wanted me out of the way. To push me into their basement suite, treat me like a piece of antique furniture, then quietly siphon off everything I'd built across 50 years of marriage. They would not get the pleasure. By the end of our meeting, Claire had filed the first request for injunctive relief. She'd also started a formal audit request on the Shell LLC Michael was using. "We'll find out who owns it, my guess?" A paper trail that leads straight back to him. As we shook hands, Claire said, "They're counting on you being scared, passive, tired." "I'm all 3, I admitted. "But I'm also furious, and I've got time." She smiled. "That's what makes you dangerous." And right then, I knew. They hadn't backed me into a corner. They'd given me a war room. 3 days later, Claire called me at 8:42 p.m. I was watching a rerun of Antiques Roadshow, pretending everything was normal. Her voice was sharp, focused. "Lori, I need you to answer this honestly. Did you ever authorize Michael to update your will?" "No," I said. "Why?" "I just pulled a version filed with probate 6 weeks ago. It lists Sarah as your primary medical proxy and Michael as sole executor. And there's a signature on it that's supposed to be yours." My heart thumped once. Hard. I never signed anything like that. Claire didn't speak for a beat. That's what I thought. She forwarded the document to my email. I opened it on my laptop, the same clunky Lenovo they laughed at, and stared at a signature that almost looked like mine. The loops were too tight, the slope too neat. A forgery done by someone who had studied my handwriting closely, but not perfectly. I zoomed in. There it was, the notary's name in the bottom margin, Kristen D. Talbot. That name meant nothing to me until I remembered Sarah's book club. Kristen, blonde, always overdressed for casual nights, once called my pot roast a bit old-fashioned. I hadn't liked her. Claire said I pulled Kristen Talbot's notary license. She renewed it last year, works in residential real estate. Guess who filed the notary log? Let me guess, I said. No witnesses, no backup documentation. Bingo! My fingers curled around the edge of the couch cushion. Not rage, yet, but something deeper. A pressure in the chest. A knowing. They weren't just manipulating me. They were trying to bury me under paper. Sarah had signed me into silence. Michael had nodded through the details like a good little executor. Together, they'd rewritten my life. While I was in a hospital bed recovering from a fall they likely saw as a golden opportunity. Claire continued, this version of the will conveniently removes the clause about dual signatures. No physician letter required, no second witness. They wanted control, I said flatly. They wanted your everything. I printed the document and laid it beside my original will. The differences were subtle, but fatal. The kind of edits you make when you think no one will double-check. When you assume the old woman in the guest room isn't smart enough or alive enough to fight back. That's the thing about assuming people are asleep. You forget how sharp they can be when they finally open their eyes. I tucked both documents into a red folder labeled fraud, in all caps. And for the first time since this started, I didn't feel violated, I felt prepared. The next morning, I made coffee just the way Harold used to like it. Black, no sugar, piping hot. It helped me think. I pulled my laptop onto the kitchen table and got to work. Claire had warned me, they'll claim you're confused, delusional, that you've forgotten giving them permission. But I hadn't, and I was going to prove it. I logged into my credit union account, one they didn't know I still accessed, and began combing through every line item like I used to do with cafeteria budgets and grant expenditures. 2 transactions caught my eye. March 14th, $2, $780 to Vermont Family Retreats. August 3rd, $3, $450 to the same vendor. I clicked through the account history and downloaded the receipts. Both charges had been made with my debit card, and both aligned perfectly with the Instagram posts Sarah had made. Cozy wooden cabins, hot tubs, couples massages. All hashtagged, #grateful, and #unplugged. I timestamped the transactions, printed the bank statements, and wrote on each page in red ink, unauthorized. It felt good to use my old pen again, the one I used to grade final exams. I wasn't done. I opened a folder labeled Medical and scrolled through the latest claims filed through my Medicare portal. There it was, a consultation dated July 6th for neurological decline assessment, submitted by a clinic I'd never heard of. I'd been in Michigan that week, visiting an old friend from my teaching days. I pulled up my hotel receipt, gas card transaction, and a time-stamped photo of me and Nancy on her back porch, lemonade in hand. Dated July 6th, 1:13 p.m. I printed that too. Evidence. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't misremembering. I was being rewritten, and I had the receipts to prove it. Last, I recorded a short video on my phone, per Claire's suggestion. Just me, sitting at my kitchen table, holding the forged documents and bank statements. I looked straight into the lens and said, "My name is Dolores Whitman. I am of sound mind and body. I did not authorize these transactions. I did not sign these legal documents. If anyone says otherwise, they are lying." I saved it to 2 flash drives and mailed one to Claire's office. At 2:15 p.m., I walked into the local precinct and filed a formal police report for financial exploitation. The officer looked startled when I handed him a stack of labeled folders and 2 sets of ID. "This isn't my first rodeo," I said, "but it better be my last. Let them try to paint me as confused." I was methodical, precise, prepared, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like myself again. The knock came at 9:10 a.m. I was folding laundry, my own, thank you very much, when Sarah's voice slithered through the hallway. "Lori, we need to talk." I didn't answer, just kept folding, neatly, deliberately. A towel, a pair of socks, one of Eli's shirts they'd accidentally sent down with my things. The door creaked open. Sarah walked in, all faux concern and crossed arms. "Are you going through our finances now?" she said, trying to sound casual. I looked up. "I'm reviewing my own statements." Her mouth twitched. "You're confused again. You authorized us months ago. Don't you remember?" There it was, the play. She said it like someone offering a hand to a drowning woman, a lie masquerading as comfort. "No," I said. "I don't remember because it didn't happen." Sarah blinked. "Just once. But I saw it. The crack." The moment panic shimmered behind her polished exterior. 10 minutes later, Michael arrived, with a social worker. The woman looked kind, young, soft-voiced. "Mrs. Whitman, I'm here to check in. Your son is concerned about some recent confusion. He says there's been paranoia." Sarah leaned in the doorway, her expression carefully blank. "I invited them in." The social worker sat on the edge of the couch. Michael perched beside her, playing the worried son. It's not that we're trying to control things, Mom. We've noticed changes. You've been forgetful, paranoid. I nodded slowly. Let's play something, I said, reaching into the side table drawer. I pressed play on my phone. Sarah's voice filled the room. Why is she even still alive? The silence that followed was beautiful. Surgical. The social worker's eyes widened. Michael turned sheet white. Sarah opened her mouth. That was taken out of context. No, I said, calm as a January frost. That was taken directly from your own living room. I handed the social worker a folder. Inside, the bank records, the forged will, the vacation charges, the insurance paperwork citing early dementia, submitted while I was out of state. You came here to question my memory, I said. I'd like you to question theirs. The woman leafed through the documents, her expression shifting from polite neutrality to tight-lipped concern. I'll need to make a report, she said finally. Please do, I replied. Sarah looked at Michael like he might do something. Fix this, spin this, control this. But for once, he looked like a boy who'd been caught with his hand in the wrong drawer. I stood up. I've filed a police report. I have legal representation. And I'm not moving out of this house. Not today, not ever. Sarah muttered something and stormed out. Michael followed, slower. He glanced back once, but I was already turning away. Let them scramble. The mask had cracked, and I had just begun the unveiling. 2 days after the social worker visit, Claire called again. Her voice was clipped, urgent. Lori, she said, we found 2 more things, and they're bad. I didn't flinch. I was past the point of fear now. Tell me. First, she said, your house. A quitclaim deed was filed last month, transferring the title to a limited liability company registered in Columbus. I blinked. Excuse me? She continued. It's a shell company, Lori. No physical office. No employees. Registered by someone named M.R. Whitman. We checked the address. It's a P.O. box. Michael used it 2 years ago when he launched that real estate venture. I swallowed hard. I never signed anything. I know. But the county clerk processed the transfer. And guess who notarized it? I didn't have to guess. Kristen Talbot. Bingo. I walked slowly to my front window and looked out at my driveway. My roses. My porch swing. The bricks Harold laid himself. All of it still looked like mine. But legally? They'd already stolen it. They filed it like you were gifting the house, Claire said. No payment. No sale. Just a clean transition of ownership due to age and capacity decline. I could feel it again. That heavy, invisible hand pressing on my chest. But I kept my voice steady. What's the second thing? Claire sighed. Sarah took out an insurance policy. On you? My mouth went dry. Life insurance? Yes, filed under a caregiver policy. It lists her as the sole beneficiary and includes a physician's note claiming early onset dementia and partial incapacity. I sat down, slow and deliberate. But I've never had a dementia diagnosis. She used falsified documentation, Lori. We're still working on how she got it past underwriting, but it's real. If anything happened to you, I closed my eyes. My hands were trembling now, but it wasn't fear. It was rage. They weren't just trying to take my money. They were preparing for my death, financially, legally, and psychologically. I opened my eyes. They tore out my lilies, I said quietly. Excuse me? Last week, said they made the front look dated. Claire paused. That tracks. It sounded absurd. Flowers, among everything else. But that's what made it real. It wasn't just the accounts, the deeds, the documents. It was erasal by inches. File for handwriting analysis on the deed, I said. Subpoena the policy. I want them documented, exposed. You sure you're up for this? Claire asked. I'm not just up for it, I said. I'm owed. She didn't argue. We hung up, and I looked around the living room where I'd raised my son. Every picture on the wall now looked like evidence. They thought they could hollow me out with paperwork and sweet smiles, but I knew how to build a case. And I had just found the smoking gun. The results came in the next Friday. Just after lunch, Claire sent me a single text. "Call me. It's confirmed." I already knew what she meant, but I called anyway. I needed to hear it out loud. "The signature on the quitclaim deed?" she said. "Not yours. We got the forensic report back. It's a forgery. A good one, but not good enough." I sat at the dining table, my hands folded like I was back in the principal's office, waiting for a parent to lie to my face. "And?" She didn't hesitate. "It matches handwriting from Sarah's business loan application last year." Boom. There it was. The thread pulled all the way through. Sarah forged my name to steal my home. And she'd used that forgery to back a $120,000 loan against it, a home equity line of credit she never told me existed. That loan, Claire continued, was issued 2 weeks ago, under the LLC Michael created. Sarah's name is listed as financial officer. They used your house as collateral. I stared at the photo of my wedding day on the mantle, me in a borrowed dress, Harold holding my hand like it was made of glass. We'd built this home, one check, one brick, one sacrifice at a time. And now they'd mortgaged it like it was a chess piece. "They're selling me off in pieces," I whispered. Claire's voice softened. "Not for long. I've already drafted the motion to void the deed and freeze the HELOC account. We'll get it into court next week, but this makes the case criminal, so we press charges. We're getting there. This strengthens your claim for elder exploitation. And the forgery? That's felony territory." I stood up and walked to the window. My yard looked peaceful. Sarah's hydrangeas bloomed in tight, smug clusters. I imagined her planting them while planning to bury me under the paperwork. "They thought I'd never find out," I said. "They counted on you being quiet," Claire said. "Well," I said, "they must have forgotten I made a career out of noticing forged excuses and bad handwriting." I watched a squirrel dart across the porch rail. For a second, I felt it, the ache of betrayal, but only for a second. Then came the steal. Claire said, "You ready to set this trap?" I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "Let's give them something to panic about." She smiled through the phone. I could hear it. By the time I hung up, the air in the house felt different. It wasn't my old home anymore. It was my battlefield. And I had just drawn the first line in the dirt. The lilies were gone. I stepped into the front yard that Saturday morning, coffee in hand, and froze. They hadn't just trimmed them back. They'd ripped them out. Roots, bulbs, the whole bed. The patch where Harold planted them after Eli was born was now a bare rectangle of overturned soil. Sarah stood by the mailbox, pretending to adjust a planter. "Oh," she said, feigning surprise. "We thought you'd agreed to let the landscapers clean that up." "No," I said quietly. "You thought I wouldn't notice." She tilted her head. "Lori, it was looking messy. And the neighbors, they were Harold's lilies." I snapped, louder than I meant to. "He planted them with our grandson. You tore out a memory." Sarah blinked once, then shrugged, like it meant nothing. "It's just landscaping." I turned around and walked back inside before my hands could shake. I sat on the edge of my couch for what felt like an hour, the coffee cooling in my lap. It wasn't just about flowers. It never was. They had been dismantling me, one silent step at a time. It started with, "You shouldn't be alone," then became, "We'll handle your mail." And now? Now it was, "She won't miss these." They hadn't just taken over my home, they had stripped it of everything that had me in it. Sarah had replaced my doormat. Michael moved the framed photo of me and Harold from the hallway to the guest bathroom. They boxed up my old cookbooks, too greasy, and replaced my porch swing with a white wicker bench from HomeGoods. It was still my house on paper, for now, but every inch had been redesigned to erase me while I was still breathing. That was the part that hollowed me out. They weren't waiting for me to die. They were practicing. That night I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, watching the way my face didn't flinch anymore. I wasn't shocked. I wasn't sad. I wasn't even angry. I was done. I opened the red folder on my nightstand. Inside, copies of everything Claire had filed: the will, the forged deed, the insurance application, the notarization log, the HELOC documents. And at the very back, a photo. Me, Harold, Eli, the summer the lilies first bloomed. I took the photo out, slipped it into a new envelope, and wrote on the front in bold black ink, evidence of who they erased. Then I placed it in my fireproof safe. Not to protect it, to remind myself. They wanted me silent, sentimental, and slowly disappearing. But I wasn't a ghost. I was still here, and I was about to haunt the hell out of their plans. Claire filed the injunction on a Monday. By Tuesday morning, Sarah's smile had turned brittle. We served the papers formally through the court, but I hand-delivered an extra copy myself. In a manila envelope addressed in block letters, to Michael and Sarah Whitman, immediate legal attention required I didn't knock. I didn't announce myself. I walked through the side door of my house and placed the envelope on the granite countertop, the same counter where Sarah once stood, pouring wine while whispering that I was starting to forget things. Not anymore. Now I remembered everything. Claire had scheduled a hearing for the following Friday at the Franklin County Courthouse, a will review, a challenge to the fraudulent power of attorney, and a request for temporary protection of my assets under elder abuse provisions. But that wasn't all. We also filed a subpoena for the original loan application Sarah used to open the $120,000 HELOC, the email records from Michael's business accounts that referenced restructuring family assets, and the notary logbook from Kristen Talbot. Every document, every keystroke, every signature they thought they could bury, we were pulling it up. We also filed an elder exploitation petition with Adult Protective Services. Claire said it wouldn't be fast, but it would sit in the record like a loaded chamber. Paper cuts kill slowly, she said. That's our weapon now. The morning of the court filing, Michael actually had the audacity to text me. "Mom, you're making a mistake. We can fix this without dragging everyone into court." I didn't reply. I let the silence do the talking. That evening, as I watered the rose bushes near the porch, Sarah came outside. She had a wine glass in her hand and her phone in the other, probably talking to Kristen, their now panicking notary friend. She tried to look casual. "Lori, can't we talk like a family? This is getting out of hand." I turned to her, slow and calm. "You forged my name," she blinked. "We were helping you. You said you didn't want to deal with all the paperwork anymore." "No. What I said," I replied, "was I didn't want to be buried under it." She stared at me, glass trembling just slightly. I took in every detail, her heels sinking into the soft grass, the way her free hand clutched the phone like it might save her. "Tell Michael," I said, "that I'll see you both in court." Then I turned and walked back inside, where my folder of evidence sat beside the fireplace. They thought they were signing me out of my life, but I'd just signed them into a courtroom. And this time, they were the ones with something to lose. County Courthouse Room 3B smelled like stale coffee and old carpet. The chairs were stiff navy vinyl. The fluorescent lights hummed above like mosquitoes. Nothing dramatic, nothing cinematic. But that room became my battleground. I walked in wearing my late husband's cufflink watch, gold face, black band, the one he wore when we signed our mortgage papers 35 years ago. Claire stood beside me in a tailored blazer, calm and sharp as a scalpel. Across the aisle, Sarah sat in stilettos 2 inches too high for confidence. Michael wore a beige blazer that screamed, "I'm a professional," but his jaw clenched every time the clerk looked his way. They weren't ready. The judge entered. A woman in her 60s with gray roots and zero patience. She scanned the file in front of her, then looked directly at me. "We've reviewed the video and financial records filed by Ms. Whitman's counsel," she said. "This is a hearing to contest power of attorney, to evaluate asset transfers, and to determine medical capacity. We'll begin with the evidence." Sarah shifted in her seat. Michael cleared his throat. Claire didn't even blink. She stood and began laying out our case with surgical precision. First, the forged deed. This document was filed with the county clerk, transferring Ms. Whitman's home to an LLC registered to Mr. Whitman. The notary listed is a known personal friend of Mrs. Whitman's daughter-in-law. No witness signatures. The handwriting does not match Ms. Whitman's verified records. She passed the judge the forensic handwriting analysis. Then the power of attorney. Filed during a week when Ms. Whitman was out of state. We have hotel records, gas receipts, and a dated photograph placing her in Michigan. The documents were notarized in Ohio. Claire placed a side-by-side comparison of the forged signature and the verified one on the judge's bench. Then, the audio. Claire turned and clicked play on the tablet. Sarah's voice. Why is she even still alive? The room went still. No coughing, no rustling papers. Just that one sentence hanging in the air like smoke. Sarah's mouth opened. That was taken out of context. The judge raised a hand. We'll come back to context. Michael jumped in. We were trying to protect her, Your Honor. She's been declining. Forgetful. We were acting in her best interest. Claire sat down, calm, poised. Then she said, Your Honor, may I submit Exhibit F, a signed and dated neurocognitive assessment performed by an independent geriatrician 2 weeks ago. The judge reviewed it. Cognitively intact, she read aloud. No signs of dementia, fully competent, medically sound. She looked at me then, straight in the eye. Ms. Whitman, do you wish to revoke the existing power of attorney? I stood. Yes, I do. And I want my name back on my house. The judge nodded. So ordered. Power of attorney is revoked. Property to be restored pending full investigation. Fraud charges pending. Sarah's hands were shaking now. Michael looked like he'd swallowed gravel. And I? I finally felt taller than the courtroom walls. The next morning, Claire and I walked into the clerk's office with a binder that weighed more than Michael's law degree. She called it the file. Tabbed, color-coded, cross-referenced. I called it justice, 3-hole punched. Back in room 3B, the judge had requested a full summary of the financial misconduct. Claire delivered it like a brick through a window. Your Honor, she said, sliding the binder across the bench, we present a complete timeline of unauthorized transactions, forged documents, and false medical claims submitted by the defendants under the guise of care. The judge flipped through it as Claire narrated. Tab A, withdrawal records from my retirement account. Consistently initiated from an IP address linked to Sarah Whitman's phone. Tab B, the quitclaim deed. Forgery confirmed by certified forensic handwriting expert. Notary refuses to testify under subpoena. Tab C, the HELOC loan paperwork. Signed by Michael Whitman as managing member of the LLC, using collateral he did not legally own. Tab D, medical power of attorney document. Filed while Ms. Whitman was in another state. Dated photos and receipts included. Tab E, Instagram and social media logs. Photos from luxury vacations funded by the plaintiff's accounts during disputed periods. And then Claire dropped the final nail. She played the full audio file, not just the infamous sentence, but the entire conversation I recorded the morning I returned the garden spade. Sarah's voice, laughing. Why is she even still alive? Do you know how much easier things would be if she just slipped a little further? Michael, she's been out of it since that fall. We just need one more form signed and we can move the rest of it over. The courtroom went silent. Sarah's lawyer stood up, pale and sweating. Your Honor, my client was speaking emotionally. Families say things they don't mean. Claire didn't miss a beat. They didn't just say it. They acted on it. Repeatedly, financially, strategically. This wasn't neglect. It was premeditated exploitation. Michael turned toward me then, eyes wide, lips parted, like he suddenly realized I wasn't the one on trial anymore. I met his gaze. I didn't blink. The judge leaned back in her chair, tapping her pen against the bench. I've seen enough. She looked at me. Ms. Whitman, you're remarkably composed. I've been teaching people how to catch cheaters my whole life, I said. I just never thought it'd be my own. She nodded. Your son and daughter-in-law are now under formal investigation for elder financial abuse and fraud. Asset seizure will proceed. Court adjourned. The gavel came down like thunder. Michael slumped in his seat. Sarah wiped away tears that weren't fooling anyone. And I stood up, steady, strong, and walked out like I owned the ground beneath me. Because I did. And now the law said so too. The courthouse hallway was colder than the courtroom. Sterile, echoey. Michael and Sarah didn't follow us out right away. Claire and I sat on the bench outside, just under a rusted county seal, and waited. Now we begin the civil process, she said. Recovery, reversal, and restitution. Good, I said. Let them feel what it's like to lose something they thought they'd already gotten away with. An hour later, we were called into the judge's chambers for a final review. No spectators, no theatrics, just truth and consequence. Claire opened with the neurocognitive assessment again. This evaluation was completed by Dr. Ellen Mahar, board-certified geriatrician. No family ties. Independent. Ms. Whitman's results were above average for her age group. No memory issues, no impaired judgment. The judge nodded, flipping through the report. And this was completed after the defendants filed documents claiming otherwise? Correct, Claire said. Their claims were knowingly false, and part of a pattern designed to take control of Ms. Whitman's estate and medical authority. Sarah's lawyer tried again. There was no malicious intent. This was a miscommunication, Claire stood. Then explain the HELOC. Explain the insurance policy with Sarah as the sole beneficiary. Explain the forged deed, the false notary, the POA signed while Ms. Whitman was 3 states away. Silence. The judge turned to me. Ms. Whitman, do you wish to press formal fraud charges? I looked at Sarah. Then at Michael. I saw no remorse, no shame, only fear. Yes, I said. I want my name back, my house back, and my record clean of their lies. The judge nodded. Power of attorney is officially revoked. All forged documents will be flagged. Title to the property is restored to Dolores Whitman. HELOC account is frozen pending investigation. And due to the extent of documented deceit, felony charges will proceed through the state's Elder Protection Division. Sarah gasped, a short, sharp sound like someone dropped ice down her dress. Michael looked like he might faint. I stayed seated, unshaken. Anything else? The judge asked me. One thing, I said. I pulled a folded photo from my coat pocket and placed it on the judge's desk. It was me and Harold, sitting on that front porch swing they'd thrown out. A tray of lemonade between us, the lilies blooming just over my shoulder. This is the home they tried to steal, I said. And this is who I was when I built it. I want that reflected in the record. The judge studied the photo, then nodded. It will be. We stood. Case closed. For now. Outside, the sun had broken through gray clouds. Claire put her hand on my arm. You didn't just survive this, Lori. No, I said, stepping into the light. I outlived their schemes. And I won. The news broke before the weekend was over. Claire hadn't leaked the court records herself, but someone on the clerk's team had shared them with a local reporter. The story ran Sunday morning, front page of the Franklin Sentinel. Elder abuse in the suburbs, the betrayal of Lori Whitman. My photo, one they must have pulled from a school board retirement announcement, was front and center. Me in my navy blazer, arms crossed, standing in front of the elementary school I helped rebuild after the levee passed. I looked proud in that picture, strong, like someone who didn't let people walk over her. It fit. The article detailed everything. The forged will, the quitclaim deed, the stolen funds, the insurance policy filed behind my back. It didn't sensationalize. It didn't soften. It told the truth. And the neighborhood read every word. By Monday afternoon, the shift had begun. Neighbors who used to give polite waves now gave tight-lipped nods when Michael walked to the mailbox. The woman across the street, Mrs. Everett, the one who always hosted wine nights with Sarah, stopped waving altogether. Claire told me Sarah's bank froze the HELOC account before Monday even hit noon. They flagged it as a high-risk fraudulent loan, she said, which means no more withdrawals. No more renovation plans, no more anything. Michael's employer, a boutique estate planning firm downtown, placed him on indefinite leave pending an internal ethics review. That'll cost him his license, Claire added. Eventually, I didn't celebrate, not loudly, but I did watch. I saw the signs pulled from their yard. The real estate company they'd hired to quietly list my house was no longer working with them. I saw Sarah return a brand new leather sectional the delivery men never even brought inside. I saw Michael pull the Tesla into the garage and leave it there, like even the car was ashamed. But more than anything, I saw the difference in their faces. No more smug smiles. No more controlling tones. Just quiet, fear. The awareness of a fall that hadn't finished landing yet. And me? I kept my routines. I went back to my morning walks, replanted 2 of the lilies, answered calls from friends who hadn't heard from me in months. Lori, I had no idea, they'd say. I didn't either. I'd reply, but now I do. When the Sentinel called and asked if I wanted to make a formal statement, I gave them only 1 sentence. They underestimated the wrong old woman. And that, as far as I was concerned, was all the world needed to hear. The consequences didn't take long to catch up. Sarah was the first to fall. The state filed charges under Ohio Revised Code Section 2913.49, identity fraud and forgery, with enhancement for elder financial exploitation. A 3rd-degree felony, Claire called to tell me. They're moving fast. The insurance fraud tipped the scales. That false dementia diagnosis, that's medical impersonation. The penalties are steep. I didn't smile, but I did exhale. Sarah was arraigned quietly. No press, no cameras, but word got out. The same neighbors who used to brag about her themed birthday parties were now whispering in grocery store aisles. Michael didn't speak to me again. Not a call, not a text, but I didn't need his words. His lawyer sent a formal notice of civil restitution proceedings. Michael would be held personally liable for $120,000. The full HELOC plus interest. He signed the loan, Claire said. Even under the LLC, he used forged assets to back it. He'll either pay it back or face asset seizure. Good. Let him feel what it's like to lose something built on lies. The county clerk restored the title to my name within 10 business days. They flagged the forged deed as void ab initio, never legally valid. Like it never happened. The paper version of an exorcism. Claire filed 1 more petition, a permanent no-contact order. Not just for Sarah, but for Michael, too. You sure you want to go that far? She asked. I'm sure, I said. He stood by and watched her bury me alive with a smile on his face. She didn't argue. The order was granted within the week. I watched from my window as Michael packed a U-Haul one gray afternoon. His shoulders hunched, his movement slow. Sarah wasn't with him. Her car had disappeared days earlier. Word was, she moved in with her sister in Akron while awaiting her pre-trial hearing. The silence that followed was strange. Not sad. Not peaceful either. Just room to breathe. Eli sent me a letter, crayon drawn and folded 5 times. Grandma, I miss you. Mom says we'll see you soon. I hope you come back to my school. I told them you used to be the boss of a whole school. Love, Eli. I ran my hand over the page and let myself cry for the first time in weeks. Not because I lost them. Because he hadn't lost me. Not yet. I placed the letter in my nightstand drawer next to the deed, the court order, and the original photo of me and Harold by the lilies. They had tried to take everything. But now I had it all back. And they couldn't come near me again. Not with a hug, not with a pen, not with a single whisper.